Thank you. And if you see one little square without a picture, that is our awesome team member, Matt, who will be recording this event. So we will share that with you later. So before we get started, I do want to do a quick audio and video check. So if you can hear and see us okay, please either raise your hand or send us a little chat. Awesome. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, everyone. Great. So happy Tuesday. We hope you all had a nice Valentine's Day if you like that. If not, that's okay. We hope you have a great day. So thank you all for joining us today. We're super excited to be able to continue to provide these events for you through our program, SBIR Connect. We're starting this year pretty strong by having this awesome panel here with you. And before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to talk a little bit about our program and our partnership. For those of you who are new, I think we have a good amount of new people that came through the other agencies as well. So thank you all for sharing it. But SBIR Connect is a Connect program created through a partnership with NIH PAC under NAVWAR. I know all those acronyms, but NAVWAR is a Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, and it is one of the Navy System Commands or SYSCOMs. Through a partnership, we hope to bring more awareness to SBIR and STTR programs and help foster those relationships between the government and industry and just make it a little bit more accessible. And then Connect. So Connect is a San Diego nonprofit, and we are here to help innovators in the region through our different programs. We have programs that focus on mentorship, education, as well as providing you access to investors. So it's a really good opportunity. If you're interested, I'll make sure to put our website information on the chat. And lastly, there is some really awesome and exciting news happening here in San Diego that I did want to share. Connect is taking over Petco Park. If you're not from San Diego, that might not mean anything, but it's a huge baseball park. And we're taking over April 28th. The mayor has declared it Innovation Day in San Diego. And it's going to be a massive celebration of all innovation in San Diego, from live site to tag, so genomics, clean tech, all of it. And we would love to see you there. So if you'd like to participate, we'll also drop the registration on our chat. And if you'd like to showcase your company and have a booth, feel free to email me at gvonson@connect.org and I'll provide more information. So without further ado, with our awesome panelists, I'll kind of explain a little bit of the agenda. So each one of our panelists will have a chance to introduce themselves and their awesome programs. And then after that, we compiled a list of all of your pressing questions through registration. So we'll go ahead and kind of go through those from the most asked to the least asked and try to get through all of them. I highly doubt it. You all had some great questions. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'll just go through how our title had them. So the first person will be Ben Schrag, who is the SBIR STTR Program Director and Policy Liaison at the NSF, or the National Science Foundation. And while I'm pulling up his slide, please welcome Ben.
Thanks, Gretel. Thanks, everyone, for attending and appreciate the opportunity. Just a few takeaways for you, and I really hope that everyone will go to our website, which is here at the bottom of my slide if you want more information, or email us. There's a general inbox at the bottom as well of the slide. Feel free to reach out. We are very eager to encourage folks to reach out, eager to engage with new awardees. Most of the folks who apply and get funded by our program are new applicants, are new to both NSF and are new to the SBIR program more broadly. So at the NSF, we have a fairly significant size program. As you'll hear from my colleagues, all of us are dealing with pretty large scaled activities. Our budget is about $230 million, which amounts to about 400 small businesses that get the first phase of our funding each year. Those companies, as you can see from the top third of my slide here, are mostly startups. Almost all of them are quite small, quite young as companies, and most of them have never participated in the SBIR program before. So please don't let unfamiliarity with the program dictate your willingness or unwillingness to try to take the first step here. Second thing I'll say about our portfolio is we really focus on commercialization. The program directors at NSF are all dedicated to this program. All of us have been either startup investors or startup founders in prior lives, so we get where the entrepreneurs are coming from. We've been there. We understand the journey. And so we are trying to really make this program focused on being entrepreneur friendly. Because of that commercial focus, our portfolio companies have quite good commercial success. We put about $1 billion into these awards over the last 6 years, but in the same period of time, our portfolio has raised about $14 billion in follow-on funding. So that's about a 14-to-1 leverage, which is great. All of you who are doing the kind of deep technology innovation that all of us will be talking about today are going to need our funding and then probably lots of other support and funding to get to where you're trying to go. Our portfolio has also had about 200 successful exits over the last 6 years, exits, IPOs, M&A, that sort of thing. The NSF is really focused on trying to create a very open set of topics. There's really no technology area we don't support, as long as you have the high-risk innovation with a strong commercial case. We provide grants or cooperative agreements, which are the most flexible types of awards that the government offers, so that you can flex our funding, flex our work plan to make sure that any pivots you go through can be handled. And we also have an ability to kind of start the process very quick and easy by the project pitch, which is something you can submit through our website. It's about a 2-pager, and it allows us to give you some feedback and let you know if there's a chance that you might be a good fit or if you're not a good fit, and if so, why not? And again, that's something that we encourage you to submit anytime you're ready. So with that, I will stop, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing. So we appreciate you being here, all of you. Really, we're very thankful that you're here. So the next person that is on our list is Stephanie Fertig, which is the HHA Small Business Program Lead at the NIH. That's the National Institute of Health. And I believe HHS stands for Human and Health Services, but I'll
Health and Human Services. Okay. Health and Human Services. Close though.
Thank you. And so I'll go ahead and pull up your slide now. So
great to be speaking with everyone today. NIH is actually one of the largest sources of early stage capital for life sciences in the United States. And particularly since I'm imagining we're talking to a lot of people who have worked potentially with the Department of Defense or other agencies that aren't like NIH or HHS more broadly, we tend not to be the main purchaser of the technologies that we're developing through this program. Our goal really is to translate those great innovations that are happening in the lab and get them into the hands of the patients, clinicians, caregivers, and researchers that need them. Since we're not going to purchase those new and great technologies, again, people across the United States are going to be purchasing those technologies. We are really here to help de-risk technologies and help those companies get to the point where they can attract investors and partners to take those great innovations all the way and get them into the marketplace. Now, we do support some technologies that don't require investors or partners, but a lot of what NIH does, development of new therapeutics, new diagnostics, those do often require additional investment beyond the SBIR and STTR and/or additional partners. And so we're here to get that data, to get that information, to bring you, as you can see here, kind of down that product development pathway and then get, again, into the marketplace. We recognize that many of the individuals that we work with, they may be brand new to this whole concept of starting a business and starting a company and getting going. And so we provide a number of resources and programs to help support our innovators through this whole product development process. So it's not just funding at NIH, it's also resources, it's also expertise. We are predominantly a granting agency. So most of what we do is through the grant mechanisms. We also tend not to be very topic driven. So again, this is something very different from the DOD, who tends to be very specific. We have this topic, and they want people to come in for that specific thing only. We tend to be much broader. We have a much more broad, what we call omnibus solicitation. That's the general solicitation that allows things to come in that are specific to our mission. So we really want you to identify the problem that's out there. What are the problems of those patients, clinicians, caregivers, and researchers? And then talk about how your innovation is going to solve that problem. So it's a little bit of a different way of looking at it compared to, say, again, the DOD or some of the other contracting agencies. So I'm going to keep it brief because there's a lot of questions to be answered today. But please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can see our website there, seed.nih.gov, as well as our email, seedinfo@nih.gov. If you don't get your question answered today, feel free to contact us and we'll answer it through our email. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You touched on a lot of things that I think came through questions, so I'm sure we're gonna expand on those in a little bit. But our next panelist is Eileen Chan. She's the Outreach Program Manager of the DOE, or Department of Energy. There's also some really cool stuff going on there. So thank you, Eileen. While I pull up your slide, everybody say hello.
And give you this 5-minute overview of the DOE SBIR STTR programs and answer your questions as well. What are the basics? For those of you who may be even new to SBIR, this is an early stage non-dilutive R&D fund. Then the awards go to small businesses. For phase 1 awards, which is the entry point into our program, we issue grants, just like Stephanie was talking about with NIH, which are flexible awards in which you are really the person with the idea and you are the one executing the program. We are the 3rd largest SBIR STTR program, so our grants are in excess of $300 million a year. And you know, I think you're already hearing a theme that the different agencies have the same but different SBIR programs. So every program's a little bit different. Our topics are focused and they are aligned with the DOE mission. So in addition to having a good early stage idea, you do have to actually align with our topics and our subtopics as well. So there really has to be a pretty good match there. But I do want to at least point out that everybody probably associates the DOE with providing leadership in clean energy. But did you also know that we also have other aspects to our mission, which include leadership in basic energy and engineering sciences? We look for new detectors, new instrumentations, components for accelerators, nuclear fission and advances in nuclear fusion, as well as advances in conventional nuclear energy technology, enhancement of nuclear security as well, cybersecurity, and many, many other areas. So you'd be very surprised at all the wide variety of topics we issue. I encourage you to go to our funding opportunities page, look at our topics document, and one of the topics documents, which are not available right now, but to get an idea of the flavor of the type of things that we fund in advance of our fiscal year 23 solicitations. I do have on the right here a picture of how our program works. Phase 1 is the entry point into the program, like all SBIR and STTR programs. It's an early stage idea that has the potential to have impact and to advance the technology in your area. And we issue about 400 of these awards a year. And that research and development takes place over a 6 to 12 month period. The grant is about 200 or 250,000. You do move on to phase 2 awards, and you can also move on to a second phase 2 award and a third phase 2 award, as is shown on this graphic. Many people say that in deep tech and hard tech, it takes about 10 years to develop a technology. And so our follow-on phase 2 awards are to take you through that lean period before you're attracting investment and customers from the private sector. And we do have many applicant support programs as well as awardee support programs. Our Phase 0 program for first-time DOE applicants is very popular. And if you have not submitted an application to our program, you can apply for this program and you will receive one-on-one coaching, and your coach will help you through our application process. email us with questions, especially if you have a question that has not been answered during this webinar. And please go to our homepage and join our mailing list so that you will have access to all the announcements, the funding opportunities, all the going-ons in our department. And we'd love it if you followed us on social media as well. We have Twitter and LinkedIn accounts. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great summary, and to kind of highlight that, I think every agency has a mailing list and they all provide a lot of really great resources. So if you're interested in these agencies, don't hesitate to do that. I know I'm signed up for all of them. So I actually got to see Ben at a different workshop last week and they answered a lot of really great questions. So please go ahead and do that. So now if you've come through SBIR Connect, you probably know this next panelist, but if not, everyone, this is Shadi Asum. He is the NAVWAR SBIR STTR program manager. He is the person we have our partnership with, which is why you see his face so often with us. So while
that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think so. So give me a second to pull up his slide, and then Shadi, please go ahead.
Yes. Thanks for having me again for these monthly workshops. And thanks to all of the panelists. It was really great to connect with you guys, I think, before this and have this opportunity to connect with you on this event as well. So the slide that I have here is just a brief slide that kind of covers, I know we kind of put the NAVWAR SBIR logo in front and center, but I think everything that we've mentioned here pretty much can speak for all of Navy, which again is a part of DOD. On the top left-hand quadrant, you see kind of the federal organization of who participates in SBIR. And we are underneath DOD, and then under Navy, there is a various set of different commands, each with some sort of a responsibility. And I represent NAVWAR, which if you have glasses and can see it really up and close, I am just one of the different commands that are underneath there. We, I would say, let's go to the top right-hand quadrant, which talks about differentiators, what differentiates Navy from some of the other agencies that participate in the program. Our topics are very specific, a little contrary to, I think, NIH. We definitely have a lot of our topics are addressing Navy needs, and they are tied or bound and championed by some sort of acquisition, modernization, or sustainment program. I'll talk a little bit about why that's kind of a little bit important, at least for on our sector. We also have something tailored transition support, I would call it. We've instituted these two different, I would say, programs. One is called the STP or SBIR STTR transition program within Navy. Basically, if you are awarded a phase 2 award with us, which is the same phase 2 that you would know in the SBIR realm, you have the opportunity to be matched with a business consultant in the Navy and to help with your marketing materials and to be able to present at what we call the Forum for SBIR STTR transition event. We actually have our annual event on this here in San Diego. If you are attending West 2022, which is here at the San Diego Convention Center this week, you will get to see and meet some of these small businesses that have been awarded Navy SBIR topics. But all those companies that do get a phase 2 award has the ability and entrance into this program, which allows them just to have additional government customers and help broaden your awareness once you've been funded. The second thing is experimentation in the Navy is pretty big, and we instituted something called the SBIR Experimentation Cell, or the DONSEC. And essentially, it's a group of consultants that is offered to small businesses that have been awarded Navy SBIR awards to help them with placing or putting some of their prototypes and technologies on board official experimentation venues. And these are important because should you do participate, it helps with us as Navy decision makers to decide on how to transition it or if we are going to transition it. So that's a pretty important part. And then I think it's pretty standard that if you've participated in DOD or even in some of the Navy specific ones, you know that we do contracts and not grants. So it's expected that we get something for our funding. So there is that concept where you are provided something, but we do issue out a specific set of deliverables that companies who do get funded will provide the government. Bottom right just shows the different phases. It's very much similar to what has been discussed here. Eileen did a fantastic job explaining that. I think the only thing that I would say is a little bit different is that for phase 3, it's a very important part or an element to us. It's our expectation that any of the Navy programs that first push out a topic into our broad agency announcement or publicly, if you will, for you to propose a solution to, it's expected that that government program is going to fund it after phase 2. So it shows us at the Navy that we're putting an investment of funding towards something. And so for us, a phase 3 is more like a sole source government contract to us. And that's our sort of goal or success story in mind. And then bottom right just shows our notional participation schedule. We are aligned under DOD. And so all of the topics that Navy issues alongside with some of the sister services that you see there are all in the DOD BAA, which is also hyperlinked at the bottom right. That is a notional schedule. So I think the website itself actually does have a mailing list for you to subscribe to get the up-to-date announcements when a certain topic or a group of topics is available for you to review, consider, and submit a proposal to. And that being said, I will give it back to Gretel.
Thank you so much. Yeah, okay. I'm all exit out of all the presentation. So thank you all so much for your introductions. And since we have a lot to get through, I'll just go ahead and jump on it. One of the first questions I think you all answered during your intros, which is the difference between contracts and grants. I do want to say that although they're different, and Shadi mentioned, you know, for contracts, they expect something in return. And then as Eileen and Stephanie mentioned, with grants is a little bit different. They have a different view of how they fund these SBIRs. It is all non-dilutive funding. So I think that's like the biggest thing to point out when it comes to that. And if any of our panelists wants to touch a little bit more on the difference between the two, please go ahead. And if not, it's kind of hard with Zoom, right, to get the vibe when everyone wants to speak. But if not, I'll go ahead and move to the other question that comes up a lot, which is topics and open topics versus the DoD has a very strict way of doing the topic. So I guess for your agency, if you don't have topics, how does that process work? And then for, I think Shadi's the only one that does have topics that are very specific, how that comes forth. So please, whoever wants to go ahead, just get started. I think I saw Eileen raise her hand, so.
Oh, I just wanted to say that we have very focused topics as well. So you do have to be responsive to the topic in addition to having a good early stage idea. Otherwise, you know, your application is considered non-responsive. So when you look at the topics, just think about how you can really address what the problem is that's being discussed in the topic and the subtopic description. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think one of the questions that when it comes to topics, because topics can be very general. So is it a category or is it someone specific to your agency writes the topic every single, and that's another question. Do you do broader agency announcements and how many times do you post them throughout the year?
Yes, the program offices, there's 13 participating program offices who are technical experts in their area, whether it's nuclear energy or solar energy or mitigation of nuclear waste. They write the topics, they formulate within their program office the topics, and they are very specific. Some are a little broader than others, but mostly they are fairly specific. And they're the ones that put the topics together. So we have 2 releases a year as well. So to answer the other question.
So we're similar to that respect on, I would say, the Navy side with Eileen that we do post topics 3 times a year. And our topics are authored by government personnel, and they are the technical experts that's backed by some sort of Navy program office that has a specific need in mind. So that's a similarity, yay, that we have on that side.
Thank you. And I think we'll go to the non-similarity. So I'll go ahead and ask Ben now how his process when it comes to topics works.
Yes, I encourage people to just forget about topics for NSF. The way to think about NSF, if you want to think about, okay, good fit versus bad fit, is, if you want to call this a topic, our topic is basically commercially laser-focused startups. That's essentially our topic, our one topic. Doesn't change, it's always our focus. And so the question, is this of interest to NSF? We try not to have top-down interests because the best thing that we think works when you work with startups, which is a very specific kind of organization, is to let them pursue their vision. Most startups are formed with a very specific vision, and if the government tries to create too much of a viewpoint there, then that there's a temptation or a tension between the startup pursuing what the government wants and the startup pursuing what they want. And startups only really create magic if they pursue what's in their own kind of heart. So we try to give enough leeway so that whatever the startup is doing will fit somewhere in our topics. Now we do have topics at some point to figure out how to group you, because we have to get deep technical reviews, just like all of us will be doing. But as far as the folks who are stepping into the program for the first time, I would encourage you to submit a project pitch and not worry about topics. We will tell you which topic you fit into, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
And then is kind of unrolling applications when it comes to submitting the pitch?
Yeah. The pitch is open all the time. Submit anytime, get a response between 1 to 4 weeks. And then the full proposals are typically 3 windows per year right now. So the next window probably is too soon. It'll close in 2 weeks, and then the window after that will close in June.
Great, thank you. And then I'll pass it off to Stephanie.
So we're more like NSF than DOE or anyone in the DoD. We do have some specific program announcements that are out there on a specific topic, but if you look at, often those program announcements are extremely broad. Even if they're on a specific topic, it is just much more broad. It may be on a specific disease area like Alzheimer's disease or related dementias, or it could be on a specific section of, really looking at maybe later stage development of neurological devices. So they do still tend to be fairly broad. And again, kind of more like what NSF is talking about, we're really interested in you as a company have identified a problem that falls within our mission space. We'd like you to come to us, say, we've identified this problem that patients, clinicians, caregivers have, or researchers, and this is our solution. The vast majority of applications that come to us come in through what we call our general omnibus solicitations. Those are the general SBIR and STTR solicitations that we have out that kind of cover the mission space of NIH as well as the CDC and FDA. So those omnibus solicitations cover those 3 operating divisions within the Health and Human Services. We do have about 8% of our funding does go to contracts. In those contracts, we have a small number of institutes and centers across HHS who participate in those contracts with specific topics. But again, the vast majority of what we do does not fall within those specific topics. Comes into that general omnibus solicitation. We have 3 receipt dates a year: April 5th, September 5th, and January 5th. So the next one is in April. And the majority, again, of our applications hit on those 3 receipt dates or come in under those 3. So it is a much more broad general thing. If we do have specific targeted funding opportunities or topic areas, those are written by the federal staff here at NIH. They're the ones that develop those. They look across their scientific areas. There's usually a specific reason or need to develop those. And that's the only reason that they would do that. Otherwise, again, there's an expectation that, as at NSF, companies look and see a problem and they're developing those solutions, and we want to make sure to give them the freedom to do that.
That's great. Thank you. I think that's for those that come from the DoD side of things, that's what we would call kind of like an open topic, where you're kind of just sharing what you got going on with the government. But I do want to touch, and Shadi, that's a little bit more like why you don't do open topics at the DON and how that aligns with, kind of like that contract structure as well.
I think for us, it's a little it's a new concept. And then I think if I'm going to use the classic phrase, if it's not broken, don't fix it. At least for us. So like we don't do open topics just because it's hard, because we focus so much on transition and because we focus so much on getting to a phase 3 and anticipating and expecting that the government office who first pushes out a topic will transition it. I think that's why our topics are so specific, so that we can get to a point where we can award that small business after phase 2 a sole source award that's no longer funded by the program. So I guess that's why we keep it close and specific. So
yeah, and then just to kind of highlight that, because there is other DoD agencies that do open topics, but just to note, kind of how the Navy does it, as Shadi said, really focuses on transition. And out of the DoD agencies, I believe the DON does have the highest transition rate, which is getting to a phase 3, which is either, having a successful SBIR within the government, so transitions into usage in there, or it's successful, being bought by a large business, so commercializing way. So I think that's success both ways. At least that's how the Navy sees it. But we have a question here that I'll go ahead and ask, and I believe this is more for Ben, but since we're in the talks about the pitch and the proposals, what is a good template or example of a pitch, and can they see it? So do you share that information?
So I would encourage you to go and actually, there's specific questions that are asked for the pitch, which will give you a little bit of context around what you're going to be responding to. You can go to our website and just see the full set of questions before you start working and actually go in to submit. We don't provide successful pitches, but I will say a couple things. One is that there's a lot of support agencies out there, like the Gretel and Shadi and what they do, who have kind of come at this from different angles. Who could probably give you some more advice about that. The pitch is one of the biggest things we had in mind when we developed the pitch was to basically have no false negatives in some sense, right? So that we're not inviting any pitch that has any possible chance of being a good fit for funding. We are inviting a lot of stuff that probably is not a good fit for funding. So we're taking some false positives. So we do invite a lot of pitches. So I wouldn't worry too much about having to be exactly right. The reason we don't provide an example, which is the same reason we don't provide a full proposal example, is that, again, we're doing that. If we do that, we're tempting you to try to be like what we want you to be rather than who you are. And we really want to know who you are. We want you to not feel like any pressure at all to conform to what you think we want to hear. And the less we give you those breadcrumbs, I think the more you are yourself, and that's the most important information for us. So I understand the need to want to have that document. I actually found somebody who could give me theirs, and I gave my successful phase 1 proposal when I was funded by this program to colleagues. But so if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can go find all of our awardees online and try to find them and get their pitches if they're willing to share them. But we don't provide those, fortunately.
Thank you. And I really love how you describe why you don't share that. I think that's great. So I'll switch it over a little bit, just so that you shared, some great resources that are out there for helping write a proposal or come up with your pitch. And so to me, that brings phase 0 with the DOE that Eileen barely touched on. So if you could share a little bit more about what that is and how you help, maybe not you, you can share a little bit more about that, but how it helps people get started with the application process, that'd be great.
Well, it's a program that's been around for about 7 years now, and it is an application assistance program, and you have to be a first-time DOE SBIR STTR applicant to apply. And you do have to know what it is you're going to do. You want to be a technical expert in your field. You have to know which topic and subtopic you're applying to. This is not a program that's going to write a proposal for you, but the proposal process is unfortunately lengthy. For first-time applicants, you can plan on spending 100 to 150 hours putting together an application. It's a 3-month cycle, so you do need to sort of sit down, draw out a timeline, what you're going to get done each week and who's going to do it. And so they help you do all that planning, and they help you through some of the bureaucratic aspects. There's a number of system registrations to do. They can help you with your letter of intent, which is required as part of our application process. You submit a 500-word letter of intent to the DOE so that we kind of know what's coming down the pipeline. And we also do provide feedback if the LOI is considered non-responsive. In addition, the Phase Zero program, they will have an expert look at your project narrative. You could have some you could have a little bit of market research done. There may be a little bit of IT support. It's not a super big amount of support, but they'd help you through about 5 or 6 different services to get you through your first time submitting an application. The program is popular. We do have we are helping businesses that have less experience. We have looked at the numbers, the size of the businesses, and also their experience level in terms of getting awards from other agencies. So the people coming into the Phase Zero program are definitely more early stage startups, and we do have a large number of underrepresented groups that enter into Phase Zero, which is women-owned small businesses, socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses, as well as businesses in hub zones or underrepresented states. So that is something that we see as a help to some of the underrepresented groups as well. That's in a nutshell, the program. You do have to come in as an expert, and you do have to plan to write your own proposal and bring the guts of the technology to the program, but they will help you get through those hurdles.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing. We have a lot of people that come through asking for the Phase Zero program. And I believe that there's other agencies that also do a variation of a Phase Zero. So the NIH. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, Stephanie, please go ahead.
Absolutely. And I put a link in the chat for all of our resources on how to prepare the application. That includes instructions. We have an annotated form set. We do provide sample applications. We get a number of questions around that. So there are a number of sample applications that are available. And we also have an applicant assistance program. Now, there are 24 different institutes and centers within the NIH that have an SBIR and STTR program. And each of those 24 institutes and centers do things a little bit differently. So just like each agency is a little bit different, even within NIH, there are some differences on how each part of NIH operates. So not all components of NIH participate in that applicant assistance program, but you can see the list of those individuals that do participate. And again, the most important resource is the program officers. The program officers are really here to help you. One of the great parts of coming in for the grant as opposed to the contract, contracts have what they call a blackout period. So you can't actually talk to the program officers and ask questions. Not true with grants. You can come in and chat with us anytime. We've got a very much an open door policy here. So please reach out. Contact the program officers. If you're not sure who to contact, if you're not sure who's within your area, that's okay. You can always use the email that I had up on my slide, and I'll pop that in the chat again anyway. But we would love to hear from you. You can ask those kinds of questions. So that's one of the great benefits of having grants.
The grants, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you.
I do want to say that for the BAAs, so the broad agency announcements for the Department of the Navy, we do have a window where you can ask the topic authors questions, and we actually always encourage people to take advantage of that time, because as Stephanie said, after that time you cannot talk to them, and that's what we call the pre-release period. On our website we have more information of how all of that works. So if you are applying, we always say use a pre-release period.
It's only 30 days, so yeah. It's not a revolving open door policy, but it is a good chunk of time. Yes, I agree.
So we do our best, even if it's contracts. I think we've covered a lot of the questions already without me even having to ask them. So thank you so much for being so open. One of the questions that we get all the time is, how do you score your proposals or your evaluations? I think for the Department of the Navy and Shadi, you can share a little bit more, but they do post a little bit of how that works. But if everyone can share a little bit more, that'd be great. And anyone who wants to take the first stab at it, please go ahead.
I mean, I'm unmuted, so I can jump in. We actually recently updated our website, and we kind of have a process. We have the process of the whole application and then even the review process online. And we put out in the omnibus solicitations and in the solicitations the review criteria that we use. There are 5 main review criteria: significance, innovation, approach, environment, and investigators, in no particular order. And we have what we call 2 levels of review. We have a peer review panel. Those are individuals outside of the federal government often. So they're your peers who end up looking at and reviewing the applications and providing the NIH with feedback. NIH takes that information. Then we've got the second level of review, which is our advisory councils. They look at the scores, look at what program officers are suggesting that we propose to fund. They make a recommendation, and then the institutes and centers make the final decision. So the directors of an institute or center makes the final decision on what gets funded. So the review process does have this peer review component that is kind of core and central to the NIH process. If you've never been part of a peer review panel, we'd love to have you. We actually do encourage people to reach out to us and offer to volunteer to be on peer review. But you can also find on the web, we have mock peer review study sections that we've recorded. They are available. I'm going to pop those in the chat as well. And if you're new to the NIH, we actually had spring of last year, we did an extensive conference that we have up on the website, all the materials associated with that are really focused on those new applicants. So those individuals who may not be that familiar with the NIH. We put a wealth of information into that conference. And so I'm going to pop that into the chat as well. But as part of that conference, we did a mock study section. And so I'm happy to post that in there, and you can see exactly what our reviews look like.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, I can't see the question. There was another question with regards to, I think, well, first of all, does Shadi, Eileen, Ben, do you guys want to share a little bit about how you do the process? Is it, I'm assuming Ben's might be a little bit similar to the NIH, given the it's a little bit similar. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so same thing as the NIH, except for we don't actually have a score. The program director takes external feedback, and external review if reviewers are involved, the same way as NIH. But then basically the program director kind of makes their own decision, summarizing the external review and their own diligence as well. So it's a little bit more opaque, I guess, our process, with a little bit more program director input.
Thank you. Great. And then Eileen.
Yeah, I mean, the same, it's similar to what Ben was saying about the NSF process. We do the peer review, which is a technical expert. A team of 3 technical experts will perform a technical review of the proposal. We have 3 criteria. The first one is the strength of the technical merit of the idea and the execution of the idea. The second one is the team. Make sure you have the right expertise on your team. You build your team out so that you can actually execute your work plan. And then the potential impact of the idea if it's successful on the field of technology. So there's like 3 criteria for the phase 1 application. And then the reviews come in, and then the program managers will rank the proposals, and the most highly ranked, according to the technical merit, but the most highly ranked proposals are the ones that are funded. And we always have a number of meritorious proposals that are not funded, because we have more meritorious proposals than we have money in our program. But the program managers will apply what is called program policy factors based on portfolio balance and other factors which are listed in the FOA as well. And so they can shuffle things around a little bit based on, what they want to fund and that type of thing.
Thank you. And I'm assuming Shadi is the only big difference.
Ours is very similar to Eileen's. I think the same 3 criteria that she mentions are the same ones that we do. We do also have a set of at least 3 government evaluators that will evaluate each proposal that comes in, and we do a quantitative score, and the top ones that meet a certain funding level that we have. Of course, as Eileen mentioned, it's exactly the same way we do it at the Navy.
Thank you. And I think one of the questions that actually came through is with regards to how you evaluate the team. And this one came specifically for Stephanie, but I think we can generalize it. And it's, does NIH award grants to PIs that do not have a medically trained background, or should we try and hire an MD to run the project? I think that just goes to that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And the answer is we certainly have individuals who are the investigator, head investigators on a project who do not have a medical degree. We have individuals who have engineering backgrounds, actually a variety of different backgrounds. The key is making sure when we talk about investigators and looking at the qualifications of investigators, we really mean the whole team. So for example, it might make total sense that if you're developing, say, a handheld app for that, treats or diagnoses a disease, that the principal investigator might be somebody who has more of a software background, might really understand how to get apps out there into the market. However, it might be equally important to have someone who understands that disease or understands that community and is able to provide that feedback and guidance. That person might be on your team. So I'm using that as an example. You can extrapolate that out in a variety of different ways, but I think the key here is make sure that you have the right people on your team. Look around and think, and this is one of the big mistakes that we do see, is people come to us and they may have a platform technology. They're trying to address the need in a specific scientific community or disease community, and they don't have anyone who has the expertise from that disease community on their team. And so they run the risk of making mistakes that might have been made in the past by that disease community, or missing some really important issue from that community. So it's more about the team and less about the individual person.
Thank you. And I think that applies to everyone. So yeah, we get the nods of yes. So if anyone wants to add anything, please go ahead. If not, I will go ahead, and I don't see any hands, so I'm going to go ahead and move. Some of the questions we're getting now, and some of the questions that I think we always get, is a little bit when it comes to eligibility, especially the difference between being a US citizen and a foreigner. So one of the questions that just came through is, does the owner of the company need to be 50% US citizens? And they understand that, but is it okay for the project's PI to be a foreigner? And we got that question also a couple of times through their registration, which asking, if it's a company that's a foreigner and then they have a subsidiary in the US, how that works with the SBIR STTR program. So if anyone wants to take a stab at that, please go ahead.
I'm going to jump in and say, here's one way that we're all similar. The eligibility criteria.
Yes.
So there's, if you're looking for a similarity across everybody here, it's that eligibility criteria. And the good news is that the Small Business Administration has a really comprehensive eligibility document around the SBIR and STTR programs. And so I would encourage you, if you're curious, hey, is my company eligible? Utilize that document. And thank you, Ben, for popping that in the chat and beating me to it. Excellent. Then there's the question of, well, what about the PI? What about the investigator that's actually submitting the grant application? That becomes more of a question of, are you eligible to work in the United States? So you have to be able to legally work within the US. And that's because, again, same across the board here, the work needs to be done in the United States. There are some potential situations where there could be waivers for that, but I will tell you, in general, the work needs to be done in the United States. And so that's why you need to have people who are legally allowed to work in the US.
Great, thank you. I think that perfectly answered that question. So I appreciate that. And that's something that we get all the time. I'm not sure about you guys, but that's a question that we get often. So thank you for clarifying it. We have another question, and this one's a little bit more on the STTR side, which is great because we haven't really discussed the sister program to the SBIR. And I think this one actually came from either the NSF or the NIH during registration, which is with the STTR program, what specific documents are required for the small business to obtain with the partner university prior to proposal? That's also a question we get often. It's how they can partner with universities for an STTR. So if anyone wants to share a little bit of, go ahead, Ben.
Sure. I think probably the specific application requirements probably vary by agency. I think with an award, and correct me, colleagues, if I'm wrong, but I think with an award, the only thing that's required for STTR that's not required for SBIR is a cooperative research agreement between the small business and the STTR partner. Most agencies, when there's an STTR, the partner institution, the university or the research institution is going to be usually a subaward. And so obviously there may be rules for each agency about how subawards are documented. At the NSF, there's actually nothing with the initial application. There's nothing that's needed that's extra, but with the final diligence of an award that's going to be made, there are a couple of things that we can walk you through when we get to that point. But obviously, we recommend that any of our applicants who are going to work and send the funding of the award to any other institution, that they think about disposition of IP before they go too far, because our goal is to fund technology that's going to make your company commercially successful. If the rights to anything that we're paying for are not kind of yours free and clear, that does create extra risk. Usually the IP that we fund is necessary for your company to control and to use that to create its place in the market. So a lot of times, trying to figure out whether the particular subawards that you're working with are going to create encumbrances on your IP is something you want to figure out before you promise them a check, in my experience anyway. So that's our point of view.
And I would say at NIH, a number of our SBIRs also have university partners or other partners. A significant number of our SBIRs have partners. Although it's required in the STTR, it's allowed in the SBIR. And so I would say thinking carefully about that intellectual property, what partners you want to partner with, all of that. I mean, that's true across the board. I think it becomes very important with the STTR since that partnership is required. But I would say that thinking carefully about the partners and intellectual property, that's just a good rule of thumb for both programs. I will state to you, and since we're talking briefly about the STTR, a difference between some of the agencies is how they use their SBIR versus their STTR. At NIH, they're reviewed alongside each other. Scope is extremely similar, if not identical. The difference really is around the partnering and the partnering requirement and the resulting work requirements and other policies around that. But as far as the scope, ours is virtually identical. But I do know that there are some agencies where the scope or how the STTR is used is very different. So it's important to look carefully at an agency when you're determining if you're going to do SBIR or STTR and what you want to, which one you want to go with there.
Yeah, and I think that's something to note too, not just with STTR and SBIR, just every agency is different. So when you're applying to them, if you're applying to multiple, really look at their website and what their requirements and what their expectations are, because they're all very different. Although it's the same program, as you've gotten to hear from all 4 of these agencies, and there's like 11 federal agencies. So there's some similarities, but there's also a lot of very different processes within each. So when you're getting ready to start your proposal or your pitch, really, really dive into that and be aware of what they want ahead of time, because it is time consuming as well for you. So.
And I would jump in another big difference, and we saw a hint of it, and I didn't actually put our budgets up on our slide. A big difference is budgets. Again, we do get these guidelines from the Small Business Administration. We have those, but at NIH, we have the opportunity to request a waiver to exceed those guidelines, and we do. And that's because we often do things that require that additional time and money, particularly when you're talking about doing large animal studies or human subjects research. And so again, I would think, if you're used to thinking about one agency and one budget requirement and one kind of way of thinking, walk into another agency with a little bit of a fresh open eyes, because they might have different guidelines around budgets, around timing, around how they operate, even how they want you to talk to them. Those could all be very, very different.
Yeah, and I agree. Very, very different indeed. We have 5 minutes left. So there's two things I want to point out. One, the budget, as Stephanie mentioned, if you're not familiar how the SBIR program gets budgeted, we do have a video on our website. It is a tax on R&D funding for each of the agencies, which is the reason there's only 11 federal agencies that participate in SBIR, because there's a certain amount of money, and there's only 5 that participate in STTR, also because of that money and that tax. But the R&D, there is a question that comes through, what qualifies as R&D? And I think, Ben, you've mentioned this before. So if you want to touch a little bit of like what R&D is and means, that'd be really great, because that's something that we can't like get all the time. What is R&D and how do you qualify that?
Yeah, so I think this might be a slightly different perspective based on which agency you ask, but from the NSF's point of view, the idea of R&D is essentially it's technical work. It's work that's done directly to affect and develop the product, the physical or software product itself. So it's work done that follows the scientific method, involves scientists, engineers, technicians, that sort of thing. So we think about it relatively broadly, I think, compared to the definition that I think Congress puts out, but it is not anything that's kind of supporting the product effort, like sales and marketing, customer engagement, business development. While those things are critical to do, those are not paid for by any of these agencies. So one of the biggest takeaways I think for people new to this program is that we only pay for one type of thing at your business, and it's not the only thing you're going to have to do. Get your product and service out there. There are things that you're going to have to do that we're not going to pay for. And so you should always view the SBIR program as part of a larger funding strategy. It is never a sole source funding strategy for almost any business, I don't think, that has any kind of broader ambitions that I can tell. But the best way to know for NSF about R&D is to submit a project pitch, because you're going to tell us what you want to do, and we will tell you if it's not R&D, and then you'll know.
That's great.
Sorry to be a broken record.
Yes, please. I think with the last 2 minutes, I would love to hear just what each of you think is a key element of a successful SBIR. And we'll just end it on a positive note that way. So whoever wants to take the first stab at it, please go ahead.
I think one of the most important things you touched on, Gretel, was know the agency that you decide to apply to. For the DOE, make sure you're responsive to the topic. Also, read the funding opportunity announcement. I'm sorry that it is 80 pages long, but you do follow the directions on how to submit an application. Do not make a mistake that will result in your application becoming administratively declined. So really following the directions, be responsive, be focused on solving the problem that is in the topic, and budget and plan your time so that you can create a quality application, and reach out to us with questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Shadi, you've been quiet. Do you want to go?
Okay, no, I can't. Yeah, I would say, so for government SBIR contracts, I know that there is a designated government technical point of contact. It's someone in the government that's overseeing the work by a small business. And I would say the collaboration between a small business like their PI and that government TPOC is essential. And so to ensure that the work that's being done throughout the civil life cycle is in line with what the topic is and what the TPOC is wanting. But that, I think that fostering that communication and sharing that and having meetings and those venues to actually ensure that the product is going somewhere will result in a successful SBIR, at least from my opinion.
Thank you. Stephanie, anything to add?
Absolutely. I would say if you take nothing else from this, from the NIH perspective, is to contact us. I mean, certainly understanding the differences in the agencies is really important. I would encourage you to definitely look at our website, wealth of information. So when you do contact us, which you should do, you should contact us. You'll have kind of those clear questions to ask and clear clarifying questions to ask. So I'm going to pop into the chat the link on our website that lists all the small business program managers across HHS. We all know each other. If you email one of us and it's the wrong one, don't worry, you'll get to the right one. We'll get you there. So, but very important to reach out and talk to us.
Thank you. And then we'll end it with Ben.
Sure. Just kind of thinking about SBIR in a larger context as a way to get you to commercial success for anyone submitting, kind of looking at a commercial facing market, which is obviously not everyone. Can't talk to your customers too much. No one's going to steal your idea.
Thank
I
you.
promise you. Don't be paranoid. I've never seen any company hurt because someone stole their idea. Nobody has little enough to do that they care to steal your idea and build a company off of it. I promise you. So please get out there and tell people what you're doing and get their feedback.
Thank you so much. And I think we're a minute over, but I want to just go ahead and thank you all so much for being here today. I think for people to understand the SBIR program is to understand the differences between our agencies and the fact that although their technology might not fit in one, it might fit in a different agency. So as you all mentioned, the key takeaway is to reach out, to educate yourself, and to contact us if you have any questions. And if you go to the page where you registered for this event, all of the agencies links are there, and it should get you to their contact information. And we will be sharing their slides that were presented today, as well as this video once it downloads with all of you. So once again, thank you so very much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great
Thanks, everyone.